Government's district development model has returned. This is what the president said when he was leading that Imbizo to which Makura was speaking just now in that bite. And that's been taking part, of course, in Sedibeng. Now, Ramaphosa was joined by several cabinet ministers and a number of other government officials. The Imbizo is centered around improving service delivery. My colleague Aviwe Mtila is joining us now from there. He's watching those proceedings. Good afternoon, Aviwe. Welcome to today. Thank you very much for your time. Well, Imbizo is done and dusted. How did it go?
Well, the President Cyril Ramaphosa just wrapped up the main address here in what was really a fruitful engagement between the community of Sedibeng and Sharpeville, more importantly, and the government stakeholders. They had all three spheres of government, from national, provincial, as well as local government. The mayors here coming in from all around Sedibeng. Of course, you'd know that they've had a myriad of problems when it comes to service delivery, facing issues of water, issues of just the potholes that is littered around many areas here, but of course also the issues of electricity that some communities say that they have been without for at least 6 months. It's something that I want to actually bring in Minister Pravin Gordhan on, just to touch on what could be done. Minister, thank you for joining us at eNCA. You heard some of the community members here speak on the electricity woes. How do we then, going forward, tackle these issues?
As we've demonstrated that there is enough electricity infrastructure here to make sure that everybody who can afford it can actually get electricity. The big challenge is the illegality. Firstly, in terms of illegal connections. Secondly, in terms of illegal operations of transformers and what they call mini subs. And thirdly, the vandalism that goes on as well. So the appeal that the President made, and we are making on behalf of eSCA, is for communities to take charge of their infrastructure. Because you can have one transformer damaged and 16,000 families will be without electricity. But then eSCA is blamed, but it's not eSCA's fault. The fault lies with certain people in the community, and perhaps others who come from outside the community, for illegally tampering with this equipment that they should not be tampering with. So, the bottom line is, these Imbizos serve the purpose of also mobilizing the community to look after the water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, roads and other equipment, clinics that are within this community, schools that are within this community. That's their assets as a community. They must look after them, and that's the appeal that the President has made. Where there are issues, we now know that eSCA has regular meetings with councillors. I've had a meeting with MEC Maile as my co-convener with all of the mayors of all the municipalities in Gauteng earlier this week to understand their issues, but for them to also understand eSCA's issues. And that will lay the basis for cooperation as we go forward as well. Part of that cooperation is about payment. You can't keep replacing equipment if there's no payment for that equipment. But we also need to make municipalities more responsible for ensuring that indigent families that are poor and who are on an indigent register, receive their free basic services. So in the case of electricity, it's 50 kilowatt hours of free electricity. And in some places it works well, in other places it doesn't work well. So we've got to popularize that as well, because that's a right that poor people have, and government pays billions of rands for that right to be given to our citizens, as the President explained.
Okay, Minister, I must get your reaction just on the SRU that we saw yesterday, sweeping in, for example, in corruption around eNCA. What does that say about the rot within the state-owned entities and what still needs to be done?
Well, we've said for a long time that state capture meant that each of the big entities like eSCA or Transnet, or even the smaller ones like eNCA, and Denel and others as well, have undergone severe damage as a result of the corruption, the fraud and the stealing that took place in these entities. So in the case of eNCA has a partnership with the Richtersveld community, and if diamonds are mined in that particular area, and if they're sold at the right market price, the money eventually goes not only to the company but to the community as well. What we had under state capture is possibly, and this is what the SIU is investigating, diamonds were mined, sent to a friendly diamond trading company, which might not have sold those diamonds at market prices, and might not have sold diamonds at all for that matter, but which left the country at the end of the day. So once the SIU has its investigations completed, we will unearth who was involved, how many diamonds possibly were stolen or underpaid for in this whole system that was actually created. And we actually compliment the SIU for the work that they're doing, because in this way the public becomes more aware of what is happening and how money that is due to poor communities was in fact hijacked along the way, in this case in the form of diamonds, and that money is lying somewhere else in the world. So the raid, I think, was about saying, let's look at the documentation, let's look at what was mined and what was received and what was sold and at what price was it sold, so that we can begin to uncover where did the money actually disappear at the end of the day.
And just lastly, Minister, the President did mention some interventions that were taken towards Eskom and reducing load shedding itself. And we've seen lesser darker days. Does this mean that the dark days are behind us?
Well, we're hoping so. I think the President announced a comprehensive plan which says, firstly, Eskom must, on its generation side, get greater efficiencies there and do the maintenance faster so that we have more megawatts from the current system. Secondly, we acknowledge that we need more experienced people. So qualification and skill is one thing. 20 years of experience is quite another. So we've had volunteers, black and white, coming forward to assist the existing management team at power stations, to hold their hands, to coach them, and separately to give training programs as well. Thirdly, we need to get a lot more investment into renewable energy in particular, but other forms of energy as well, including gas, so that we increase the amount of megawatts that we are able to produce from all sources of electricity. And then lastly, we are re-engineering Eskom into three completely different components: generation, transmission, and distribution. The transmission part is almost done. And making sure that there's more investment on the transmission side, so that the transmission wires that you see over our heads reach all parts of the country, particularly parts of the country where you have a lot of sunshine, for example. In the Northern Cape that are not directly connected at this particular point in time. So that requires a lot of investment, which we will have to attract both from the state but also from the private sector as well as we go. So we will have some levels of load shedding if we are sitting on the margin between running according to the demand and running sometimes behind the demand. But over the next few months, the board of Eskom, the management of Eskom, us as a department and the presidency are working together to make sure that we get the best out of the current plant that we have. And with the addition of these coaching skills that we are bringing in, hopefully the performance will improve from what we have, a 60% energy availability factor, to above 70% in the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister Pravin Gordhan, Minister of Public Enterprises there, talking about efforts that have been put in on the ground to ensure that we have hopefully less darker days. Of course, this is at the presidential Imbizo, the fourth one that's at the Sedibeng district municipality, with promises to tackle the service delivery woes of the people in and around this area.
Thank you very much, Aviwe Mtila there in Sedibeng, just having a quick chat there with Pravin Gordhan. Now, still ahead.